The medical bay of Station Kepler-7 hummed with the steady rhythm of alien technology. Dr. Velthrix stood at his station, his four manipulator arms sorting through surgical instruments with practiced precision. His chitinous carapace gleamed under the clinical lights, and his compound eyes reflected the holographic displays that surrounded him. He had served as the station's chief medical officer for 6 cycles now, treating dozens of species from across the galaxy. But never, not once, had he treated a human. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Commander Zhao stumbled in, supporting a bleeding crew member on her shoulder. The injured woman, Lieutenant Maria Chen, had a deep gash across her arm from a maintenance accident in the engineering deck. Blood dripped onto the pristine floor, each drop a testament to the urgency of the situation. "Dr. Velthrix, we need immediate assistance," Commander Zhao said, her voice tight with concern. The Vexlarian physician turned, his antennae twitching as he processed the scene. His secondary arms reached instinctively for a medical scanner, but then he stopped. His whole body went rigid. The scanner clattered back onto the tray. "No," Velthrix said, the translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless galactic standard. "I cannot treat the human." Commander Zhao's eyes widened. "What? Doctor, she's bleeding. This is a medical emergency." "I am aware of the medical emergency," Velthrix replied, backing away from them. His legs made small clicking sounds against the floor. "I cannot treat humans. It is beyond my capability." Maria winced, pressing her good hand against the wound. "Commander, maybe we should just go to Dr. Kellerman." "Kellerman is in the Outer Rim conducting research. He won't be back for another week." Zhao turned back to Velthrix, her voice rising. "Doctor, you took an oath. You're required to provide medical assistance to all station personnel regardless of species." "I am bound by the Healer's Covenant, yes," Velthrix said, his voice taking on a defensive tone. "But humans are different. You are unpredictable, dangerous. Your biology is aggressive and strange. Your immune systems attack your own bodies. Your cells replicate until they destroy you from within. Your children are born incomplete, unable to survive without constant care. And your emotions, they override all logic and reason." He gestured with one of his upper arms, the movement sharp and agitated. "I have read the medical literature. I have studied the case files. Humans heal incorrectly, creating scar tissue instead of regenerating properly. Your bodies seal wounds with crude patches. You pump your blood through a single vulnerable muscle that can fail at any moment. One clot, one blockage, and you die. It is a disaster of evolution." Maria's face had gone pale, whether from blood loss or from the doctor's words, it was hard to tell. She swayed slightly, and Zhao tightened her grip. "That's enough," Zhao snapped. "I don't care about your prejudices. Treat her now, or I'll have you brought up on charges." "It is not prejudice," Velthrix insisted, his antennae flat against his head in a clear sign of distress. "It is concern for proper medical care. What if I make an error? What if your strange chemistry reacts poorly to standard treatments? I could kill her. I will not risk it." The standoff continued, tension crackling through the air like static electricity. Maria's breathing had become shallow, and the blood flow seemed to be increasing rather than slowing. Commander Zhao looked ready to physically drag the doctor to his patient if necessary. The door opened again. Everyone turned. A man entered, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing the gray uniform of station maintenance. His name tag read Morrison. He carried a toolbox in one hand and moved with the casual confidence of someone who had faced worse problems than a stubborn doctor. His eyes took in the scene immediately, noting Maria's injury, Zhao's fury, and Velthrix's defensive posture. "What's the holdup?" Morrison asked, setting down his toolbox. "The doctor refuses to treat Lieutenant Chen," Zhao said through gritted teeth. Morrison looked at Velthrix. The alien physician had pressed himself against the far wall, his multiple arms held close to his body in a protective stance. The human maintenance worker studied him for a long moment, and something seemed to shift in his expression. The anger that might have been expected never appeared. Instead, his face softened with understanding. "Doc, you're scared," Morrison said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I am not scared," Velthrix protested, but his translator betrayed him with a slight tremor. "I am being professionally cautious." "Right," Morrison said. He moved slowly, deliberately, like someone approaching a nervous animal. He crossed the room in measured steps, then did something that made everyone in the room freeze. He knelt. The human lowered himself down until he was below Velthrix's eye level, his posture completely non-threatening. He looked up at the doctor and spoke in that same calm, steady voice. "Easy, buddy." Velthrix's antennae quivered. In Vexlarian culture, to lower oneself before another was a profound gesture of respect and vulnerability. To show one's throat to a potential threat went against every survival instinct. Yet this human had done it without hesitation. "You're worried you'll hurt her," Morrison continued, still kneeling. "I get it. We're different from what you're used to. Our biology is messy and weird. Nothing like the clean, logical systems you learned in medical school, right?" "Yes," Velthrix admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything about humans is contradictory. You should not even be alive with such flawed systems." "But we are alive," Morrison said gently. "And yeah, we're strange. We're tough in some ways and fragile in others. But that's exactly why Maria needs you right now, because you're a doctor, and a damn good one from what I hear." "How can you know this?" Velthrix asked. "You are human. You should be angry with me. You should be threatening me like your commander." Morrison smiled, and there was no malice in it, only warmth. "Been working maintenance for 15 years. You know what I've learned? Fear isn't the same as hate. You're not refusing because you don't care. You're refusing because you care too much. You're afraid of screwing up, of hurting someone because you don't know enough." He shifted slightly, still keeping himself low and unthreatening. "But here's the thing, Doc. Maria is going to die if you don't help her. Maybe you'll make a mistake. Maybe our weird biology will do something you don't expect. But you know what the mortality rate is if you do nothing? 100%. Velthrix's compound eyes fixed on Maria. She had slid down to sit on the floor now, her back against Commander Zhao's legs. The blood had soaked through her uniform sleeve and was beginning to pool on the floor. Her skin had taken on a gray tinge that even a non-human could recognize as dangerous. "I do not have sufficient knowledge of human physiology," Velthrix said, but his voice had lost its sharp edge. "The medical databases are extensive, but theoretical knowledge is different from practical experience." "Then we'll help you," Morrison said. "I've got basic trauma training. Commander Zhao probably has combat medic certification. We can guide you through what you don't know. You bring the medical expertise, we'll bring the human-specific knowledge. Team effort." The doctor's antennae slowly lifted from their flattened position. "This is highly irregular." "Yeah, well, welcome to working with humans," Morrison said with a slight grin. "We specialize in irregular." Velthrix looked down at the kneeling human, at the complete absence of anger or judgment in his expression. In his entire career, no one had responded to his fear with such understanding. Most species would have demanded, threatened, or reported him. But this human had recognized his distress and met it with compassion instead of fury. "If I do this," Velthrix said slowly, "if I make an error and she dies, it will be on my conscience forever. My people have long memories. If you don't do this and she dies, it'll be on your conscience anyway," Morrison replied. "At least this way you tried. At least this way you were the doctor you trained to be." Something in those words seemed to reach through the physician's fear. Velthrix took a shuddering breath, a sound like wind through reeds, and slowly moved toward his medical station. His manipulator arms began retrieving instruments, moving with the automatic precision of years of training. "Get her on the medical bed," he instructed, his voice steadier now. "Commander, I need you to tell me about human blood types. Morrison, what is the average clotting time for a wound of this depth?" Morrison stood up and helped Commander Zhao lift Maria onto the examination table. "Depends on several factors, but we're looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes for initial clotting if the wound is clean. That gash is pretty deep, though. Might need help." "Human blood contains platelets," Zhao added, moving to the other side of the bed. "They're cell fragments that cluster at wound sites, but if she's lost too much blood, her system won't have enough to work with." Velthrix ran his medical scanner over Maria's arm, and data flooded his displays. His trained eye began parsing the information, relating it to the xenobiology texts he had studied but never applied. "Her blood pressure is declining. The wound has severed a significant vessel." "That would be the brachial artery," Maria said weakly, demonstrating that she was still conscious enough to contribute to her own medical care. "Runs down the inside of the upper arm." "Your species has names for individual blood vessels?" Velthrix asked, momentarily distracted by this detail. "We have names for damn near everything," Morrison said. "Comes with being a species that likes to categorize stuff. Doc, you're going to need to seal that artery first, or she'll keep bleeding no matter what you do to the surface wound." Velthrix's hands moved with increasing confidence, selecting instruments and adjusting settings. "The tissue regenerator. It should work on human cells?" "It'll work, but human cells don't regenerate as cleanly as most species," Zhao explained. "You'll need to use a lower setting and go slower, or you'll get excessive scarring." "Scarring," Velthrix muttered, making adjustments to his equipment. "Such an inefficient way to heal." "Hey, it works for us," Maria managed to joke, though her voice was strained. "Chicks dig scars anyway." "I do not understand that reference," Velthrix said, but there was something almost like amusement in his tone. He positioned the regenerator carefully. "This may cause discomfort." "Pain," Morrison translated. "It's okay to say it might hurt, Doc. We're used to it." As Velthrix began working, his initial trembling steadied. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it transformed into focused concentration. Morrison and Zhao called out information when needed, guiding him through the peculiarities of human anatomy. The brachial artery was sealed first, the regenerator knitting the vessel walls back together with painstaking precision. Maria gritted her teeth but didn't cry out, understanding that any movement could complicate the procedure. "Your pain tolerance is remarkable," Velthrix observed, moving to address the muscle tissue. "Most species would require sedation for a procedure of this nature." "Humans can take a lot of damage," Zhao said with a hint of pride. "We're stubborn that way." "Stubborn or simply unable to properly process danger signals?" Velthrix asked, but the question lacked his earlier hostility. It was the curiosity of a physician trying to understand his patient. "Little bit of both," Maria admitted. "We've got a high baseline for what we consider normal discomfort. Evolutionary advantage when you're a species that used to hunt by just walking after prey until it collapsed from exhaustion." "That is horrifying," Velthrix said, but he continued his work without pause. Layer by layer, he repaired the damage, his compound eyes tracking the cellular response to treatment. "Your tissue is responding well. The inflammation response is stronger than I expected, but not problematic." 20 minutes later, the wound was sealed. New pink skin covered what had been a gaping injury, and while it wasn't perfect, it was solid. Maria flexed her arm experimentally, wincing at the tightness but showing no signs of continued bleeding. "How do you feel?" Velthrix asked, his scanner making one final pass to confirm the repair. "Like I got sliced open and sewn back together by an alien doctor who was terrified of me," Maria said with a weak smile. "So, pretty much exactly what happened, but alive." Definitely alive. Thank you, Doctor. Velthrix's antennae dipped in what might have been the Vexlarian equivalent of a humble nod. I should apologize. My refusal to treat you was unprofessional. Fear is not an excuse for abandoning medical duty. Morrison, who had been standing quietly to the side, shook his head. Doc, you're being too hard on yourself. You were honest about your limitations. That takes guts. And then you pushed past the fear and did the job anyway. That takes even more. The human is correct, Zhao added, her earlier anger completely gone. You could have continued refusing. Instead, you chose to trust us and try. That's what matters. Velthrix looked at each of them in turn. These strange, fragile, impossibly resilient creatures with their contradictory biology and their capacity for both violence and compassion. He had spent 6 cycles avoiding them, reading about their dangers, convincing himself that they were too unpredictable to treat. But now, having actually worked with them, having felt the steadiness of Morrison's calm, and the strength of Zhao's support, and the courage of Maria's endurance, he understood something fundamental. Humans were dangerous, yes, but not in the way he had feared. They were dangerous because they saw fear and met it with kindness. They saw weakness and responded with support. They knelt before those they could have threatened, and they extended trust to those who had shown them none. I would like to learn more, Velthrix said quietly, about human medicine, about treating your species properly, if you would be willing to teach me. Maria grinned, some color returning to her face. Doc, I've got a whole catalog of weird human medical quirks I can tell you about. Did you know we can get hiccups that last for years? Or that we sometimes grow extra teeth in random places? That sounds medically fascinating and deeply disturbing, Velthrix said, his translator managing to convey a sense of interested horror. Welcome to humanity, Morrison said, clapping the doctor gently on what might have been a shoulder. We're your new favorite nightmare. As they helped Maria to her feet and began the process of official medical documentation, something had fundamentally changed in the medical bay of Station Kepler 7. A bridge had been built, constructed not from speeches or regulations, but from a simple act of vulnerability. A human had knelt and said, "Easy, buddy," and in doing so, had shown an alien doctor that fear could be acknowledged, faced, and overcome. In the cycles that followed, Dr. Velthrix would become one of the galaxy's leading experts on human medicine. He would write papers on their remarkable healing abilities, give lectures on their psychological resilience, and train other physicians to treat this strange, wonderful, terrifying species. But he would always remember this moment, this first human patient, and the maintenance worker who taught him that sometimes the bravest thing a healer can do is admit they're scared and try anyway. Humans, he would learn, had a saying, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it." Standing in his medical bay, watching Maria joke with her crewmates despite her recent brush with death, Velthrix understood that this courage was not uniquely human, but perhaps they were better at teaching it than most.